I just wanted to welcome everybody to the meeting. Constance was going to try to be here to do the welcome, but she's had some things going on, so I'm going to do that in her absence. As a reminder, we've kind of opened up the mics and changed this to a Microsoft Teams meeting. So we want you guys to be interactive and ask us, questions when we get to it. We did receive a few questions late Friday, so we're going to try to address those as part of the agenda items. So the first item on the agenda is DHHS updates from Margaret. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to her, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Lori. Let me check my audio. Are y'all able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of updates today. A reminder that the Appendix K flexibilities are going to be ending as of November 11th. I know that DDSN issued a memo some time ago with a reminder to that effect. DHHS issued a bulletin in May, and then we released an additional reminder bulletin as of last Friday, outlining those flexibilities that would be ending across all of the waivers. So wanted to bring your attention to those reminders that have gone out. Also, we have had questions with regard to FTE reports to assist with our finance department's updates to the rates relative to the General Assembly cost of living increase. I have been in contact with them. They expect for those FTE requests to go out to private providers within the next 2 weeks. So we recognize they have gone out to the DSN boards. The intent is to send them out to the private providers. That should happen within the next 2 weeks so that that information is also taken into account in establishing the rate increases. And the rate is how we address passing that cost of living increase to the provider network. We have also been working internally with our project management office as well as DDSN on our transitioning ICF direct billing project. Again, that's going to follow a similar course as our fee-for-service transition for the waiver services. So we've done much in the way of internal process mapping, identifying areas that are going to require additional actions. Our individual, Russ, is really heading up this project for us. So he has been in contact with DHEC in terms of process and what will be required on the DHEC side for this project. So we are continuing to make progress with that. I anticipate that we should have some additional materials to share with the group coming up. That's going to look similar to many of those timelines and supportive documentation as we did for the other direct billing conversion project. So work's continuing on that. More information to come in terms of timelines and supports that we will be providing for that project. I also have just a couple of updates, and then for my partners at DDSN, I don't want to overstep anything that you may be intending to cover. I think there were some questions that have come up around the post-payment claims review. So Lori, let me know if y'all would like to address anything on that front. Then I'm happy to speak to anything I can on my side.
Yeah, so I think that will be covered in the quality management update part of the agenda. Are you going to be able to stay around for the whole meeting?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Well, we may, if questions come up, you can jump in at that point, if that's
okay,
okay with you. Okay.
absolutely, sounds good. Okay, those were my updates, so I will turn it back over to DDSN.
Hey, Margaret, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I kind of just came in a little late, so I probably missed it. So I heard you talking about the ICF um, and the payment system for that. Are we trying to automate that? Because I know it's just so manual now.
It
Are y'all looking at automation for it?
It is very manual. And so what we will be considering during the project planning, there's currently a pilot that is underway for certain selected nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities. And so we're going to be getting updates as to the results of that pilot. And
Okay.
that, I believe, was about automating what parts of the process we can. And so we're going to see the results of that pilot.
Okay.
If the results look good and we can incorporate some of that, then we'll assess for the change management impact, how we feel we could incorporate that or not. But it is certainly a point of discussion as we're looking at opportunities to make this a better system.
Sounds good. And one other thing, in case I missed it too, I know in some meetings I was in last week, there was some discussion about the 5%, the COLA from July. And some of the QPLs were saying that they never got asked for FTE reports. And so just kind of want to know where we are in that process and how is that going to be, what I guess the formula you all using to come up with that.
Sure. Thank you for that question. As I mentioned at the front end, we will be sending those FTE report requests out to private providers. Those should go out within the next 2 weeks. It will include a template, I would imagine, similar to what we have done in the past. And so look for those for the private providers to come out within the next 2 weeks. And we will certainly incorporate that into the process for developing the rate increases, which is the manner in which we pass through that cost of living increase.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
you're welcome.
No,
I do
I just missed it in the beginning, so I just wanted to make sure I heard. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. I do see a couple of questions in terms of expected date for the rates to be published and when providers would receive those rates. Again, the FTE reports will need to be distributed and then turned back in from the private providers. So I do not have an expected date for the rates to be published. We will go through a similar process as we did last year to address any of the adjustments that will be needed to be made from July 1 until the date that the new rates are present and able to be billed. So we will address that, but I do not have a date certain today.
Margaret, you mentioned coming back and, giving us the retro payment back, but what about from last year? We're still missing funds for billings that were submitted after, like Jeff did his calculations based off stuff submitted by December 31st, but because of something else, there's boards out there that have not that sent their billings in from July to November of 22 after December 31st. So there's retro payments out there that are still due to us, and they were recorded on our audits. What's the idea? We've asked this question a couple times, and I know you guys with all the turnover you have, but do we have any idea about when we're gonna be able to see a second reconciliation of when those retro payments are from 22?
Sure, and that's also a good question. We have identified that with our finance team, so we're looking at the best approach to make those adjustments occur as well. So please know that we're working toward that end. Again, I don't have a firm date, but we are working to ensure that all of those that have not been issued are issued.
Thank you. I was just
You're
thinking
welcome.
it more sense to just kind of wait, since we have 12 months to bill. Wait till November 30th to do it. I mean, it's a whole year later, which kind of stinks, but it might be the safest thing to do. So there isn't a third one later.
I get you. Yep. So we're working closely with finance on the best approach, and recognize that we do need to complete that.
All right, I will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is for me. It's around conflict-free case management. I just wanted to let you guys know that we are still working towards a December 31st full implementation date for conflict-free case management. We're doing some targeted work with providers who still need to transition folks to make sure that their plans are being enacted and are working. We are seeing a little bit of a capacity issue, particularly around HASCI. And we will continue to try to work through those until we get to December 31st, and or work with HHS to try to figure out what's going to happen if we do have those few HASCI cases that we can't seem to find a provider for that is not in conflict. I also wanted to give an update on provider. Well, let me say this first, because Margaret kind of touched on this. I also want to remind folks about the Appendix K flexibilities ending. We've actually sent a couple of memos out. We sent one out a while back. We just sent one out, I think, last week, kind of reminding you of what those flexibilities are, that will no longer be there on November 11th. So we kind of set it up so that all the services had end dates on the authorization that didn't extend past November 11th. But there was one flexibility that some of the residential providers might have still been using in a few situations where day services were delivered outside of the day program, like perhaps in the residence. So that will no longer be allowed. That's not really an authorization issue. So I just want to make sure I said it out loud in this meeting so that you understand that flexibility is no longer available after November 11th. The next item on the agenda is around provider focus groups. I just wanted to let you know that we've had 3 of the meet and greets with the DSN board and commissions and executive staff. There is one more that is November the 2nd in Coastal. Those have gone very well. They've been well attended. There's been a lot of communication back and forth, so we were very excited about them. Once we finish with the DSN board, there is an intention to move to meet and greets for regional meet and greets with the private providers. So be looking for communication to come out on that. And that is it for me today, unless anybody has any questions. All right, next item on the agenda is financial updates. That's you, Quincy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to mention that our October 11th hearing with the governor's office and executive budget office staff, we presented our fiscal year 25 budget submission. I'm just going to run through the ask. Priority 1 is titled Supported Living Assistance. This $1.2 million recurring decision package is designed to address individuals currently receiving or awaiting community residential living. So for most individuals, the Medicaid waiver Res Have service covers the care, supervision, and skills training that's delivered to the individual. What's not covered in the rate is the cost of room and board, as it's not a Medicaid eligible service. So we've seen that our provider network, you guys might be reluctant to support individuals if they're not eligible for monthly SSI benefits and have no other means to pay for room and board. So monthly room and board costs they're not limited to food, utilities, pest control, residential repairs, and maintenance for those settings. The average room and board rates for all the providers statewide is $820 per month. So we took our current residential wait list. There was about 42% of the people on the list that did not qualify for SSI at that moment in time they were on the list. So we use that as our justification for the $1.2 million ask. Those individuals times the 820 average monthly room and board. So our second request is titled State Funded Residential Services. This $3.3 million recurring decision package is designed to support 16 individuals for whom traditional Medicaid reimbursable supports are not appropriate or are not available. These individuals present to DDSN in need of an out-of-home placement following incarceration or have needs that, due to their severity, cannot be supported in our current placement options. So these services will ensure that individuals are safely and appropriately supported. So that was for 16 individuals. We're hoping we did put out a solicitation on that. So, and I think has that one closed yet, Janet, that we know of? Or is it goes to I think it goes to the end of the month. So we're hoping to award that once we receive all the solicitations or proposals. Sorry, our priority number 3 is titled Maintenance of Effort or Financial Management Services. So this $3 million recurring decision package is designed to support requirements as contained in the verbiage of DDSN's operated waivers, as well as the administrative contract with HHS. Much like HHS's operated community choices or CLTC waiver, an IRS approved financial management services vendor will perform payroll and other employer responsibilities as required by federal and state law for the participant directed respite, attendant care, and in-home support services. So we asked for this recurring funding for that initiative. Priority number 4 is an earmarked authority reduction, where we're dropping our earmarked authorization by $200 million based on the fee-for-service transition that happened last April. So we are not in need of that earmarked authorization anymore. And our last priority was for the genetic medicine initiative with Greenwood Genetics. This decision package was non-reoccurring, and it's year 5 of a 5-year, $10 million investment for the state-funded initiative. So the first step in the budget process was October 11th. It's going to take approximately 9 more months to finalize the budget. We normally present to the House Ways and Means Healthcare Subcommittee in January, and then we present to the Senate Finance, Health and Human Services Subcommittee in March. So that's the next steps for the budget process. I'll pause to take any questions you might have about the budget request or anything else finance related.
Do you have any idea when the room and board rates will be approved that were submitted with the audit?
Those usually go out. I think we have an internal deadline to get them to you by the end of the calendar year, because you guys have to meet with your boards in January for approval, if I'm correct. So
Actually,
we'll speak to that similar deadline. I'm sorry.
We should meet with the boards in December for effective date 1/1. Our policy dates typically go 1/1. So, and then some boards don't meet in December because of the holiday. I know it's a hot potato thing there, but yeah, if there's any way we could get them in December, that would be better.
Okay, and if you can email me, I see a bunch of names on the screen. If you are a board that has you're going to have a December meeting and you need it by December, if you will email me and I will add you to maybe the top of the list. And if you don't need it until January, then we'll put you closer to the bottom, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank
Leases require a 30-day notice to the individual. So even if you have it January 1st and they receive it January 1st, which nobody's going to receive it January 1st, you have to give them all the way until February. So, you know, the other thing that complicates it is SNAP benefits usually change because of the change in the other benefits, such as SSI or Social Security that the individual receives. So I think some places do it a little bit later so they don't have to calculate it and then totally recalculate it. Yeah, but that notice, that is among the rights that the individual has in their lease agreements.
We'll definitely get them as soon as we can get them out this year. I think with the kind of the burden, I'm sorry to pick on you, Margaret, the burden of cost reports shifting to HHS, hopefully it'll be more timely this year for us to submit those to you guys, or at least get them approved and sent back out.
All right, well, if that is it for Quincy stuff, we will move to the next agenda items, which is policy updates, and Carolyn Benson is going to handle that.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to give an update on the background checks. So I just want to remind everyone that the current policy that we have right now should be the one that everyone is following. We have reached out to the Attorney General's office for an opinion. We're hoping to get that back before the end of the year. And then based on what they provide to us, we will then look at our current policy and make any edits that we think are necessary. And then we will send it back out to everyone. I'll take any questions or I will pass it on to the next one.
Could I mention one thing? And maybe you don't want to answer this at this point. With regard to the background checks and the LAC report, is there any way that DDSN could do a survey like Alliant does with us to make sure some of the things are in place that are not in place apparently at the regional centers? I'd just like to throw that out there. It certainly does not look good for the system as a whole when we see that people are getting by without the background checks or some other things being enforced. I'm not saying a total Alliant review, but particularly in the area of HR.
I will certainly write that down. I'm not really going to comment on that, but I will write it down as a recommendation and we can talk about it further internally.
Okay, thank you.
Quincy, it looks like there's a question for you out here related to your agenda item before we move on to the next thing. I think the question's about room and board calculations, and the question is, what are those pulled from the audit reports, or is there something separate that was supposed to be sent in?
So there's a room and board policy out there with an instruction appendix on how to do your room and board calculations. And usually everybody submits them with their audit reports as a separate, attachment. So, okay. We pull it forward from that room and board calculation, and it's an average of all the settings for the provider.
Okay.
I have it listed by each setting, but then at the end there's an average.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is provider qualifications update with Janet. Sorry, Janet.
That's okay. So just an update on provider qualifications. As you may recall, we've been trying for some time to get a provider qualifications process out. one of the things that we took advantage of that is different this time than last is that instead of going through the material management office and the formal procurement process through requesting an exception for the agency to that process so that we can qualify providers and get them enrolled with Medicaid and with DDSN, contracted with DDSN, for them to provide services without going through the material management, the formal procurement process. In order to be approved to do that, we had to get an okay from the State Fiscal Accountability Authority, and then, which they gave us the conditional approval, and it was conditionally approved based on the fact that we needed to submit our process, our policy, and our procedure documents to them for approval. That was done 3 weeks ago, and we are waiting for a response from them. As soon as that's done, we will post it. Because we're doing that process, we will not have to re-enroll current providers. For those of you who have been around for a long time, if you were approved through the process, the old process, it was good for about 5 years, and then everybody had to re-enroll. And so that is not the case this time. If you're enrolled, you're enrolled. So this would be for new providers only. That's it for my update.
All right, next item on the agenda is quality management update with Ann Dalton.
Thanks, Lori. So I wanted to remind providers to be sure that staff are submitting an addendum whenever there are A&E case closure letters that are received by the agency. This would include law enforcement and ombudsman closure letters. In addition to updating the final disposition for the allegation, there should also be documentation of training or other corrective actions or mitigation related to that allegation. This would be uploaded with the addendum. This information is required for DDSN's performance measures associated with our waivers and is reported to DHHS and CMS. So it's important that we are able to fully close out those reports. I also wanted to mention that DDSN continues to work with DHHS on the development of a new incident management system for all of the waivers that are operated in South Carolina. So that would include the three waivers with DDSN and also all of the CLTC waivers. We are also working with DHHS on a revised incident management policy. And this is all tied to the Office of Inspector General audit and the state plan that was developed back in late 2020, early 21. So more information on this will be coming out in the coming weeks. I also wanted to cover the post-payment claims review process, as I understand this is a very hot topic. We expect to receive our samples from DHHS later this week, and those samples will be waiver specific and cover the full waiver year. So for IDRD, that waiver year runs from January to December, and for CS and HASKI, the waiver year runs from July to June. So our process will begin November 1st. And I want to remind everybody that really the post-payment claims review process is not new to DDSN and its network of providers. For those of you who have been around for a while, you're probably very familiar with the DHHS reviews that have been completed over the years. And based on the findings, Program Integrity may have reached out to you following those reviews. DDSN has been the provider of record in the past, so the letters would initially come to DDSN, and then DDSN staff would work with the providers to ensure all of the supporting documentation was available to go back to DHHS. I know that I have personally worked with many of the providers on this call to develop that package of supporting documentation and then attend appeals whenever it was necessary. Those reviews were a little more involved than the current DHHS reviews, but it follows a similar process. So now that the providers are directly billing DHHS, the roles have changed a bit in that the providers will be gathering that documentation to support service delivery, and DDSN is now in the role of monitoring to ensure that the documentation is present. So we've communicated our plans for post-payment claims review over the past year, including these monthly meetings, through our quality management bulletins, the DDSN website, and also through a lot of individual contacts with providers just during the natural course of a review. When we found things that didn't look quite right or could have been better supported, we wanted to make sure that we pointed those things out to providers. So that is an ongoing process that we're doing to give providers a heads up as we try to get everybody ready for this transition. There have been some questions about the DDSN finance manual and statements in that manual. So I want to reiterate that the finance manual is a tool for DDSN to collect data and for providers to bill DDSN for services back when DDSN was the provider of record. There was an attestation that was associated with that submission of attendance logs on DSAL or the res logs. There was still an attestation to verify accuracy. At the same time, there has always been an individual service standard, whether it's in day, employment, residential, and even in the administrative agency standards. There have always been requirements to ensure that there is appropriate documentation of service delivery separate from that attendance reporting. So I hope that clears up any confusion about my frequent statement that attendance is not service delivery. Similar to how DHHS has conducted reviews in the past, our plan is to inform providers of their review. They'll receive a notification and then instructions to upload the supporting documentation to a secure portal. And then we will communicate, the staff here at DDSN will communicate with the provider regarding any findings. We will continue to update the DDSN website with any additional procedures as they are developed. Are there any questions? Or Margaret, do you want to add anything?
No, unless there are questions, you did a great job.
Excuse me, I have a quick question. When you mentioned the secure portal, where will that be located, and will there be provider training on that?
Basically, DDSN is setting up a secure link for providers to upload information at the time it is requested. And this is subject to change, but I believe it will be a secure link provided through OneDrive.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are at the point in the agenda for general questions, if anybody has them.
So Lori, I have a couple things
Okay.
on behalf of Harley.
Oh, sorry, Jen.
One is a reminder about Silver Palmetto Award nominations, and those nominations are due by the end of December. I think there was a communication that was sent out last Friday, the 13th. Was that Friday before last? Whenever, recently, about that. So that's just a reminder. The other topic is the next meeting of this group. So the next time this meeting is scheduled is the week of Thanksgiving. So that's November 20th. And a lot of people take the entire week of Thanksgiving off. So a question is, would it be better to reschedule that meeting to some other time? And then if we reschedule it, when should it be? And that is a question. And that meeting will be in person. or you will have the in-person option, so you can certainly feel free to come here. So if we can keep it on the 20th, we can move it to the 27th, which is the first Monday after Thanksgiving, or we could push it to the December 12th, or we could pick some other day. We have one vote to leave it on the 20th. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, we got a second vote to leave it.
So we have a couple, we have a few leave it on the 20th.
Okay, we will leave it on the 20th. And that's all I had.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, I think that is the end of our
Hey,
agenda.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Rachel.
Yes, yes.
Hey. I do have a question for Margaret, regarding the rate calculations. When are nursing supports and behavioral supports services taken into account or into consideration when developing those rate increases?
So let me make sure I understand the question, and then there will be part of it I likely am going to need to defer to our finance department. So Rachel, when you say nursing supports, do you mean the separate state plan nursing service, or individuals that may be in residential settings that also require nursing supports?
Yes, it would be the latter, and that they're in residential services and require nursing supports. Similar to behavior support plans. I think a lot of providers are seeing a dramatic increase in the needs of nursing and behavioral supports. And so the question came up at one of our meetings about whether or not those two professional services were taken into consideration during the calculations.
Okay, sure. I'll be glad to take that question back as we are looking at those rates. So thank you for asking the question, and I'd like to take that to our finance folks, and we'll be sure to make sure that's communicated.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. If we don't have any other, do we have other questions? Doesn't look like we do. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. And we look forward to meeting again in November.